Hey everyone, before we get started, I just want to show you this handy little statistic of my subscribed versus unsubscribed viewers. I'm currently trying to grow my channel and produce better and more frequent content, so please help me out by leaving a like, commenting your thoughts, and possibly sharing the video with friends, family, or on social media, and of course, being sure you've subscribed and turned on your notifications. Now, please enjoy the show.
This video is sponsored by DJ the Lazy Gamer, Zach Haji, and Crimson Manifesto. The universe calls on a fallen hero. What if Goku was sent to planet Vampa, Part 5?
3 sets of footsteps proceed down into the darkest and dankest portion of the maximum security solitary confinement area of the Galactic Patrol prison, a location of the spacefaring penitentiary neglected not for lack of danger, but simply because the only detainee on this level had been locked away with all intention of being left to rot. The trio's reasoning for coming here is pure desperation born of a new crisis. The smallest of the trio is a nervous fellow who seems to jump at every odd creak or groan of the massive underbelly of the jail, while his companions who stoically flank him as protectors remain completely calm. As they reach the door to a control room and protective viewing area meant to monitor the prisoner's cell and enter it, they notice the air grows tense and almost smells of ozone from the sheer amount of power lying dormant here. Losing heart, the cowardly one decides to turn back, but his helmet-bearing attendant stops him.
Your Highness, we're presently out of options. 2/3 of the universe have already fallen to the enemy. This is our only hope. He is.
Wincing in recognition of the truth, the newly appointed king of the Galactic Patrol, Jocko, orders the release of prisoner 5985, causing the other regal-looking attendant to nod solemnly as he uncovers and presses a button which halts a machine used to disperse the key of this prisoner around the massive structure like a battery, used in order to keep him sedated, seeing as how this was all they could ever do to keep him imprisoned. After a few quiet minutes, those around with any key sense whatsoever shudder as prisoner 5985 awakens. Kakarot's eyes burst wide in panic, as he isn't even afforded the pleasure of a slow and groggy awakening due to the sudden surging of his energy returning to him so quickly, snapping him awake with his mind solely on thoughts of Broly, Vegeta, the rebellion, Cold, and the unworthily held powers of Tulo. As he tries to work his sore and unused jaw to yell out in fury and confusion, he finds that he simply cannot due to his body simply not cooperating, his mouth and entire body honestly feeling dried and withered beyond belief. Then to pour salt on his wounds, the pitch-black void he found himself in, with its only source of light being a dim red glow overhead, is suddenly flooded with harshly bright artificial lights shining down a hallway, instantly searing his dry eyes and causing him to flinch and begin struggling against his bindings violently as he realized that this was a prison cell.
Whoa there! Your name is Kakarot, right? I'm gonna need you to relax.
Shielding his eyes behind his now extremely long hair, Kakarot strains against his binding still, causing the entire room and seemingly the entirety of whatever structure they were in to shake, all while wanting to verbally retort back how a cool head was impossible when one is as confused as he is right now. However, the two people escorting the speaker suddenly raised their hands with key blasts at the ready.
You cut that out or I'll blow you away.
I advise you to heed our warning. We awoke you for a reason, so there's no need to destroy the machine restraining you.
This, however, doesn't calm the rebel, who has to assume he has been captured by the Cold Empire, and this only makes him more frantic. But as if sensing this, the trio suddenly point to the insignia they bear and reveal themselves as ex-rebels. Calming down but staying wary, the Saiyan grunts in irritation, recognizing that cooperation will get him further than trying to destroy everything and making more conflict for himself. He ceases his struggling and manages a nod, but then finally wills his body to allow at least a single word to escape him.
Thirsty.
The three figures share their own weary glances to one another before returning Kakarot's nod, as if they recognize the lack of alternative options than whatever it is that has driven them to this path. The helmeted guard then reaches a hand up the wall behind him and grabs onto a lever that he flexes and actually has to power up in order to pull. When the metal bar finally slams down into the opposite slot, Kakarot feels individual locks on his hands and feet disengage before finally releasing him completely. But due to the muscle atrophy in his legs, he quickly falls forward, unable to support himself with them until he remembers to float just before slamming his head into the metal floor. Those that freed him ignore this blunder, still showing apprehension to release Kakarot, but nonetheless order him to follow them as there is a lot to talk about. A few minutes later, after climbing a few staircases, they finally reach an elevator, and stepping inside, or entirely floating in Kakarot's case, the reflective metal doors shut, and the new group of four begin to rise from the depths of the prison as Kakarot's debriefing begins. First of all, according to the bucket-headed guard, Vegeta was the one who put him in this prison, as he was apparently considered a major threat. threat, something Kakarot found weird since he for one thought that was obvious to everyone a long time ago. Though that was the least of his shock, as he now was finally getting a good look at himself. Not only was he lacking most of the impressive musculature that he'd built up over the years due to how famished he was, his appearance was also completely different now, causing him several seconds of delay between seeing his new strange form and actually reacting to it with an initial feeling of aversion at something so new and foreign to him. Still unable to speak very well, the warrior is quietly left with trying to piece together this mystery, confused why he's in a place like this when King Cold could launch his attack on the rebel army at any time, and what in the galaxy has happened to him. As they prepare for a seemingly difficult to communicate explanation, Kakarot gets a bad feeling about the grim expressions from 2 out of his 3 new companions.
The conflict, now commonly regarded as the Cold War, concluded 8 years ago. You've been locked in here ever since.
After a moment to process that statement, Kakarot's face twists up in disbelief and annoyance at what he obviously perceives as an idiotic lie.
If you don't believe it, then just use that damnable curse of yours.
Confusion again plagues the Saiyan until a spark of some sixth sense finally kicks in as he rubs the base of his neck and remembers the term once used for Tulo's future vision. Unwilling to believe such a thing, he reluctantly tries to pull harder on this sense, but it is more like he is the one being pulled. His mind is suddenly jerked back through time in order to allow him to bear witness to the events that led him here, proving that he indeed was the current holder of Tulo's curse, not King Cold, and somehow this power is not how it once was. The stream of time finally ends its reverse flow, leaving Kakarot in a spectral form with a perfect view of his repugnant home planet, Vampa, the last location he was before his memory blanks. He even feels a bittersweet happiness at finally seeing familiar faces in the visages of Vegeta and Tarble in the midst of their super high altitude training. However, a golden light shines from the planet in a pillar that causes the usually tempestuous atmosphere to settle almost entirely as the ground begins to rumble. Vegeta and Tarbo of the past quickly rush down to the planet's surface with haste, and present Kakarot finds that he can move his consciousness freely in this space as he follows with a similar feeling of panic and intrigue. Upon arrival, he is met with a sight he has absolutely no memory of: Broly gigantified and protecting the rebel home base from a giant golden great ape that is unmistakably his past self. The rebels begin to evacuate the base at Broly's order as he strains hard, even in his Akari state, to hold the old Kakarot back while he rampages fiercely towards their allies, almost disregarding Broly entirely in the process. However, as the ape's rampage is impeded, his anger grows and so does his massive body, which begins to leak an aggressive red ki that causes the air around it to mirage from its sheer intense heat. Broly grits his teeth as the flesh on his hands begin to sizzle due to his grapple with his younger brother. Vegeta and Tarble then suddenly appear on the shaggy Saiyan general's shoulders and fire off twin ki blasts into Kakarot's eyes, which causes the beast to scream in agony and rear back in pain as a deafening bellow rings throughout the planet. Even present Kakarot winces as he feels a phantom pain sting his eyes and covers his ears to relieve the splitting pain of the hellish noise.
Don't hurt Kakarot too badly. We just need to hold him off until everyone else can move to headquarters, and we get him back under control.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be enough to actually harm him. This is a lot more than 10 times as strong as Super Saiyan. We can't hold back if we want to live.
Past Kakarot then provides valid reasoning for Vegeta's apprehension as he stops clutching his eyes, which now burn red with fury, and suddenly fires off massive eye beams, powerful enough that Broly has no choice but to shrink in order to avoid them. However, doing so means some of the rebels behind them are left defenseless, and thus a single ship full of their allies is caught up in the attack and explodes as quick as a flash. Both Broly and Vegeta's eyes look on at the casualties that moments before were loyal brothers in arms, doing their best to collectively work towards peace and equality. Rage builds in both, and compounded with all the other recent stresses they've had to endure as leaders in this conflict, their hearts suddenly explode with righteous energy, and the planet begins to quake even harder. Kakarot roars in defiance and charges on all fours at a blistering speed like a rabid beast, only for Vegeta and Broly to bring his gallop to a halt as their auras begin to burn fiercely golden. Wanting no further bloodshed between comrades, the two combine their now immense ki to try and calm the past Kakarot using spirit control. However, this seems to be almost completely ineffective, whether because even now the past Kakarot still commands a massive gap in power, growing ever wider in correlation to his rage, that while easily able to solve their King Cold problem, will only create a much larger, more dangerous issue if he cannot control it, or because the two Saiyan masters Yardrati and Spirit Control are unsure if it's even possible to calm their junior's indomitable spirit. Either way, the battle only grows more intense. Present-day Kakarot finds himself engrossed with this struggle, but he begins to strain in order to continue viewing it with such clarity, and suddenly loses the vision altogether together, snapping back to reality and finding himself now having been escorted out of his cell and into what appears to be the prison's cafeteria, though he is currently its only occupant adorned in the orange prison garb. Otherwise, a guard is stationed at nearly every point of entry nearby, and only now is he beginning to realize this caution towards him is not born from anything as petty as prejudice towards the Saiyan race.
How much did you see?
The helmeted patrolman asks as he set a tray piled with the leftover slop the prisoners usually ate in front of the mutated Saiyan. After a moment to gather his thoughts and get over the sight of such a disgusting meal, Kakarot finally responds.
If Broly and Vegeta became Super Saiyans, and I had the power of the Golden Ozaru, then that means we won, right?
Though all Kakarot received was a silent stare and the sight of his own unease reflected back at him. Just then, they are joined by the well-groomed guard known as Mirrors.
Restore your strength. I believe allowing you to answer your questions on your own would be most productive.
Just answer me, damn it! How do I even have Tulo's powers? And since when did they work like that?
But as soon as his temper begins to spike, Kakarot feels as if an outside force reins him into silencing himself and breathing deeply. The peaceful patrolman simply gives him an almost pitying smile and extends a spoon to use for his meal. Grunting in displeasure, the imprisoned revolutionary begins choking down his food to regain his strength, since this future vision ability seems to be very draining. After 6 more trays of food in a tense hour or so, Kakarot is finally prompted to continue exploring his strength of future vision, and he decides to this time do so in the meditative state he'd been taught by Broly when centering his mind was necessary. This combined with no longer being only skin and bones helped to ease the learning curve of this foreign and apparently evolving ability, as Kakarot now found it easier to pull on the threads of time he'd been viewing in order to continue where he left off from. Still a bit shaky though, he realizes he is far from mastery, as all the excitement has passed when he manifests his consciousness in the past again. The planet of Vampa is now devoid of any non-native life. The rebels currently hovering just off-world in their remaining ships to view whether their last hope would end up snuffing them out in this mad gamble for power. Just as it seems the clash will continue, past Kakarot suddenly collapses and Vegeta and Broly soon rest atop his giant sleeping form in exhaustion, thankful to have even survived such an encounter, as apparently Super Saiyan mixed with Ozaru yielded powers beyond one's wildest dreams. However, as the two Saiyan generals begin to chuckle in relief, present Kakarot himself can't help but smile, seeing their joy at what they perceive to be a wonderful development. Learning from his mistake last time, Kakarot this time decides to try and skim the past for the interesting bits, rather than watching every waking moment of the near decade he'd missed. Thus, skipping forward several days helps him come to the same realization as Broly and the Rebellion about 4 days into past Kakarot's golden grade 8 transformation holding strong. For some reason, just as with this new state, Kakarot was not returning to base form. And even more shocking was that he was not gaining any recognizable signs of his higher intelligence or his inhibitions. After monitoring past Kakarot from Vampa's orbit, the Rebellion is at least encouraged by the discovery that while they are off-world, instead of causing more destruction, Kakarot's beastly past self behaves in an almost gentle and benevolent way, acting as both apex predator and protector of the repugnant world and peacefully maintaining the circle of life between the Bob Beast and Vampa Beetles, while driving off any intruders to the planet, so to speak, as any attempts for them to return to the planet while he is aware of them end in aggression, leading Tarble to a theory.
I think Kakarot has essentially been consumed by his Ozaru form. This may explain why it's basically become his base form, and why his primal instincts are all he seems to know: eat, sleep, protect territory.
Seeing that Broly's face turns up in disgust and worry at such an idea, Tarble quickly rescinds his comment and reminds it's only a theory, and that he could eventually burn himself out and return to normal.
On the chance that Tarble is correct, where does that leave us? Broly and I accessed Super Saiyan, but it's still as new to us as it was to Kakarot. And what's more, we lost good men and one of our strongest fighters just to achieve it. We need to make sure those sacrifices are worth it. No matter what, we have to end this war.
As Vegeta says this and looks to him, Broly looks back to Vampa and suddenly puts his fingers to his head and disappears, shocking everyone. The rebels begin crowding around their monitors to watch what happens next, as Vegeta prepares to jump after his friend, seeing him begin approaching past Kakarot in the middle of snacking on an old and sickly Bob Beast in order to put it out of its misery and satiate its feral hunger. But Broly stops him by speaking over comms.
Stand by. I have my own theory I need to test.
Past Kakarot finally takes notice of Broly and instantly speeds towards him, but Broly stays calm and watches carefully as his younger brother leaps at him headfirst and tries to snap him up with his massive jaws, causing Broly to smirk and dodge at the last minute by leaping away and confirming his suspicions.
Tarble, you may be right, but all of Kakarot's primal instincts aren't bad. He's playing. It's the dodging game we used to play with Ba in order to train.
Kakarot then goes for a second chomp and then another, and even with the gap in their powers, especially with Broly in his base form, the massive creature deliberately goes easy enough on his playmate as to not end his fun.
Listen to me, we have not lost Kakarot. We will win this war. Maybe if I can learn to control him, we can aim him at cold. Then all Vegeta and me have to do is set that slippery bastard up for Kakarot to tear apart.
The rebellion cheers. Vegeta directs them to find the nearest habitable planet and set up on it as they finalize their training. After a short deliberation to decide how much time the task of taming Kakarot's new power and mastering Super Saiyan for Broly and Vegeta is going to take, and decide to set one more week before it will become necessary to press their advantage on King Cold before it is gone. So everything and nothing change at the same time. As Cold is paying his way into handouts of power, the rebels continue clawing for each lowly scrap of it they can earn in order to achieve their goals. As a result, the royal siblings end up introducing the entire army to their extreme high altitude training, since they had been spending a few days high in the atmosphere anyway, and the more troops they had resistant to suffocating in the vacuum of space, the better. In return, Broly does his best to keep Kakarot docile enough to teach at least Tarbo and Vegeta the bite and dodge game. They attempt to do the same with Zarbon and the rest of the army, but as Kakarot only had a majority of bad experience with Zarbon, and most of the rebels were former Frieza soldiers who'd once looked down on and mistreated the Saiyan and his kind, it is a near fruitless effort. However, fear of dying via their commander's insane training regiment rather than the battle it's meant to prepare them for acts as sufficient motivation to push the rebel army way past their limits. Not to mention, with King Cold on the run and the likes of King Kai able to help them advocate their cause, it was now much easier to receive goodwill from civilians around the universe in favor of freedom. The present Kakarot, while impressed by all this, is admittedly annoyed when recognizing that both Broly and Vegeta seem to fundamentally grasp Super Saiyan better than he did, and become comfortable and efficient with the transformation extremely quickly, enough that they can easily rile the past Golden Uzaru Kakarot up into a frenzy if they spar too hard and anger him. The gap in power now closer, but still very much present between them. The generals don't dwell on this, however, wagering that their current strength will have to be enough. The longer they wait, the more likely it is looking into the future would give Cold an advantage. So, the official strategy meeting to defeat King Cold begins, which Kakarot decides to skip completely over out of disinterest.
Doubt whatever our side came up with in terms of plans survived contact with the enemy. Besides, I'm tired of this fancy movie from hell. Show me how I became this!
On command, Kakarot's astral form suddenly surges forward in both time and space, until coming to a rest somewhere near the center of the universe on May 26th of age 767. He looks around the expansive void as nothing of note is really there, until a massive shadow passes overhead, and he looks up to see a metallic and almost undulating moon drifting along. Ports on this mechanical moon suddenly open all over and begin to pour out hundreds of thousands of identical robot soldiers, all mass manufactured and made forever loyal to King Cold thanks to Dr. Mew's Big Daddy star design. If the rebels were going to continue to steal the Empire's troops anyway, then automation was the smartest new direction to take the family planetary genocide business.
This is where the fun begins. We'll celebrate this new age of my reign with a universal day of carnage. From now on, that which does not worship me as overlord will be reduced to ash and replaced by metal. That way, only the worthy shall prosper under my rule.
Floating closer to the metallic star, Kakarot sees that atop it stands Cold himself, in all his newly augmented glory as he oversees his troops departing across the galaxy. Suddenly, though, Cold shudders and his eyes snap over to the exact spot Kakarot's astral form is presently in, as if in this moment in the past, Cold's future vision was giving him sight beyond sight. However, the tyrant merely sweat drops and mumbles about seeing things after all the weird stuff he'd endured to gain his new powers. Then, perfectly timed thanks to the Emperor's view into the future, the rebel fleet arrives and begins their final assault, led by the newly minted generals Tarbo and Zarbon, as they begin clashing with and trying to push back the metallic army before they can spread very far. Each individual robotic soldier isn't terribly viable since they are limited to being only a tad stronger than some of the most elite warriors the Cold Empire had ever known, as a holdover of the Cold Dynasty's crippling paranoia. But where the good Dr. Mew's true evil genius lies is in the army's hive mind AI, which allows Cold's new forces to act as an immune system, so to speak, adapting to and perfectly countering whatever kills their brethren, and then transmitting that data back to the star itself to act as a factory and replace fallen troops with updated and improved ones. If not for the sheer growth in the rebel army's power, they would have already been overran, and seeing this causes the Emperor to sneer and raise a hand to throw a ki blast to disrupt their ranks. However, his eye twitches with visions of the future, and he suddenly leaves the destructive ball of energy where he'd been standing while leaping just before Vegeta and Broly instant transmission on either side of him for a sneak attack, flipping it into a trap for them. The two are lucky enough to leap away just as the key explodes, and Cold once again decides to try and pick Vegeta off first by quickly appearing behind him and trying to behead him with a knife-handed chop. But he's met only with air, as golden light causes the prince to move far faster than the vision of the future showed him he would, and thus allowing Vegeta to knock him directly towards Broly, who viciously plants his foot hard enough to shake the Big Getty Star and burst into SSJ as well, as he delivers a lariat meant to give Cold a taste of his own medicine. The Emperor is sent flying end over end, and finally falls flat on his back before coughing up blood and grasping at his crushed throat, desperate for air. Unwilling to risk any form of mercy, however, the Saiyan commanders quickly combine their power to release twin full-powered energy beams of blue and green that slam into and consume Cold, gouging off a significant portion of his shiny new space station in the process. But as the smoke clears away, their fears confirmed, as both the Emperor and his new base of operations begin to repair themselves, or in the case of Cold, transform altogether.
Quite impressive. I've seen several timelines where you were only able to singe me a bit. Is it time to use that stupid monkey you fools are betting on as a trump card now?
You aren't scaring anybody with your little magic trick. None of this is natural for you, is it, Cold? I'm willing to bet you're pumped full of a cocktail of different shortcuts to power all mangled up inside you. If we push you far enough, your body is gonna give out.
Cold then rises back into the air in his new form, no worse for wear, and smirks at Broly as he unleashes his power, which now is far more comparative to the Saiyans, and raises his hands to return their earlier ki blast to them. However, in perfect sync, the two resort to spirit control duplication and use the illusion to slip out of Cold's attacks and re-engage him from his blind spot, wagering their better teamwork and fighting skill against his raw power. This stalemate continues as more and more rebels begin to fall due to the evolving robotic threat. Tarble does his best to issue commands, but the looming power of Cold in his new form makes focusing even harder. Not to mention it had seemed to result in a power boost for the robots as well. Wait a minute. Vegeta and Broly, in the midst of their life or death struggle, are then shocked to hear Tarble speak over their comms with important intel.
Hey, you two need to fast-track your plan. Get Cold out of here ASAP, you hear me? The robots in that weird planet are feeding off his power.
The Emperor smirks at being found out and only increases his energy output to further amplify his soldiers with the power needed to deal with this rubbish. But Broly and Vegeta refuse to relent and implement their true plan regardless, suddenly mad dashing in to try and get a hold of the Frost Demon in order to use transmission to bring him to Vampa as the proverbial lion's den. Foreseeing this, the Emperor focuses on dodging their physical attacks and countering ruthlessly, slowly draining the two of energy even further and putting them at a major disadvantage. Wanting to end it, Cold creates a supernova and lobs it at the Saiyans and rebels behind them. Due to a painful lesson learned while first battling the past Kakarot, the two without a second thought redirect this attack with all their might right back, and Cold, temporarily blinded by his arrogance, is forced to take his own attack lest the Big Getty Star itself be destroyed, stunning him and leaving him open for the two warriors to suddenly grab onto him and instant transmission him across the universe by locking onto Kakarot's massive power level. A second later, and the Big Getty Star and its robotic soldiers quickly begin to lose strength as their power amplifier travels out of reach. With a joyous war cry, Tarble and Zarbon lead the army through the rest of the robots like paper, since they are forced to rely on the reserves of the space station's main and already overtaxed generators. And from there, their forces head into the starbase itself to begin destroying it. On Vampa, the trio land roughly as Cold whips Vegeta and Broly away and rarely looks around, anticipating Kakarot's arrival, unsure how he'd been caught off guard so critically. He at least takes solace in seeing how drained Vegeta and Broly are, but a flash of the future warns him that Vegeta is about to fire a weak ki blast at him. As he lifts a hand to counter it, he is instead blindsided as the immense power and mass of Kakarot finally does come barreling into him and knocks him nearly off-world and unconscious with a single furious blow. Reeling from it, Cold prepares to simply damn them all and blast the planet from orbit, but Vegeta, already prepared due to his training, intercepts this and is there to slam Cold right back down to be Kakarot's chew toy, resulting in the king being wailed on mercilessly by the ferocious ape until growing angry enough himself to force his body into evolving beyond its limits one last time.
That's it. I will not die like my son. I am an emperor. I am worthy.
Kakarot just uncaringly slams back into Cold and primarily tests his power against the Emperors with a grapple. Any gap in power Cold had just created by transforming is quickly consumed as Kakarot's fiery ki begins to burn him, causing Cold to try and escape his grasp at all costs. The heat and pressure continue to build until Cold's primary two hands suddenly snap backwards painfully as Kakarot proves his superior power once again. Humiliated, in agony, and taking advantage of now having full arms, the dastardly tyrant tries to solidly place the them both from the planet's surface for detonation. But for some reason, the energy he imparts dissipates instantly, and he sees that Broly is using the remainder of his strength in order to protect the planet's core. With Vegeta able to keep him from fleeing, Broly blocking his attempts at his trump card, and Kakarot's wild strength being aimed squarely at Cold's head, he'd effectively been locked in a guillotine, and every vision of the future was slowly beginning to reflect the same pitiful end for him, the horror of his end, just as he'd been warned. Kakarot suddenly reels back from his view of the past as that same feeling of dread returns to him and kicks him out almost, and finds himself now occupying what appears to be the prison's bathing area.
Clean up, you stink!
Ordered the helmeted Galactic Patrolman Kakarot had learned was named Zabel. He growls in irritation, but after a test sniff, recognizes that 8 years of dirt is hell on his nose anyway, and does as told. And suddenly, a single question comes to mind.
Where is my brother? There's no way Cold killed him, and I'm sure he'd want to talk with me.
You trying to convince me or yourself? I've already told you there's no question you can't answer for yourself. Stop hiding from the truth.
This time, Kakarot is all but thrown back into his vision by the power of this statement and the emotion in it. Returning to the moment, Cold seemed to accept his fate. The Emperor suddenly powers up to maximum strength and charges straight for Kakarot, who does the same in an attempt to end this kaiju battle. And obviously, when they clash, Cold is the one on the receiving end of terrible damage. Ironically, much like he'd done to Tulo, as Kakarot's massive fist had been driven through his opponent's chest.
What an amazing beast you are. You are worthy.
Suddenly, Cold used this position to jab Kakarot at the base of his neck, causing the ape to writhe in pain and reel away from the collapsing Emperor of the universe.
No way! Why would he? Kakarot! Yes. Dance on the future's grave. Reduce everything to ash for me, slave.
As the past Kakarot's primal mind is plagued with shifting visions of the future, he is thrown into a rampage far fiercer than any Broly has ever seen. And it quickly becomes evident to the present Kakarot that his past self cannot keep up this strenuous frenzy for long before it will result in his death and unthinkable destruction. So why was he still here?
Vegeta, you'll need to lead everyone from here on out. Don't worry, the hard part is over, my friend. Broly, not you too. We've lost enough. Kakarot is my little brother. My responsibility. I pushed him into this. I need to get him out. I don't see how else to do that.
The implication finally becomes clear for present Kakarot, as for the first time in a very long time, his heart is gripped by grief and fear. He watches as Broly tiredly flies to his out-of-control adopted brother, and even though dangerous, maneuvers his exhausted body to hug himself to Kakarot's chest, right above his currently oversized and uncontrollably beating heart. Past Kakarot lets out a howl of anguish and beats Broly in his chest in confusion, but his brother holds on as if the blows are love taps, even as his already heavy blood loss begins to soak into Ba's treasured ear around his waist. He smiles softly to himself as he imparts his final words with his brother, and begins to emanate a bright green light from his own heart, and past Kakarot begins to both calm and shrink. And while it's more than likely his past self never heard any of this, the present version hangs on his adoptive sibling's every word.
Listen, Kakarot, you're too old to throw tantrums anymore. It's time to wake up. You have a big responsibility now, little brother. You still need to atone for when you worked for Frieza. Besides, you have to make everyone proud. My dad, yours, Beats, Raditz, Nappa, Tulo, and everyone else. And now me. Make me proud, little brother.
Broly himself becomes the light which is absorbed by Kakarot's heart. The present version watches as his past self finally stops shrinking and shredding golden fur, until being left in the same state that he finds himself in now. His questions finally answered, Kakarot allows himself to slip back to the present following these revelations, wanting no more to do with this ability. When finished bathing, he is issued a fresh jumpsuit and only now realizes he's been carrying Ba's ear with him. Tying it back to his waist now, it's almost too heavy of a burden for him. Patrolman Zabel then leads him back to a meeting room occupied by King Jocko and Patrolman Miras. Once there, Zabel fills in the rest of the blanks to avoid any further formalities.
After that, Vegeta returned with only an unconscious you and proof that the Cold War was over. The Big Getty Star and Cold's cohorts were captured and dismantled to be used to improve the Galactic Patrol prison, which is where it was decided you would be held in light of your crimes and our inability to execute you, seeing the danger you pose.
So the reason you guys mentioned earlier for freeing me, I assume it's something more dangerous. Oh yes, much more dangerous than you. However, we believe you may be just the thing we need to deal with it.
Kakarot, what we're offering here is another chance to be this universe's savior.
As a vision of a barren and lifeless future comes to Kakarot and he waves it away, now starting to feel as if his view into the future was somehow keeping Broly around to be the angel on his shoulder, he responds,
I ain't no hero, but if If someone is threatening my universe, I've got no problem slaughtering them.
But that, plus Ultra Fam, is where we'll be leaving this story off for right now. Thanks for sticking to the end and/or for sticking with this story through its erratic releases. It's been an admittedly hard story for me to approach in some ways, and that's definitely reflected in the duration between releases of parts. And partly why this section of the story uses an also admittedly cliche amnesia plot in order to kinda set Kakarot up for where I would like to finish the story off with him in. I believe that next part will be the series finale, and I do mean that this time, so in light of that, I would like to leave you guys something to chew on before we get there. Number one being, remember that all protagonists don't necessarily also have to be good guys. Kakarot isn't Goku, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. And number two, I have been very much inspired by more seinen manga and anime, or just more mature stories in general, to try and tell a story using that slightly deeper and more heavily themed version of Dragon Ball as a series that Toriyama himself was so impressed with when he got to see the original Bardock Father of Goku special for the first time. That said, hope you've all enjoyed the story so far and are looking forward to its epic conclusion, which I will be sure to get out before years past this time. Before we go, as always, a massive shout out to the artists who provided custom art commissions like Zala77s, or who gracefully provided some of the official or unofficial renders utilized like Maxi Uchiha 22, Rodamanty Cards, Mag54 Art, and Daimao over on DeviantArt. Also, still giving credit to Dragon Garo Lee for the entire concept and visual design of how Kakarot looks and acts in the story, as well as to everyone who is involved with Dragon Ball Multiverse, because that's where the 5th and 6th forms of Code you saw came from, with those arts being done by Lee9693 over on DeviantArt. We also owe a very obvious and massive shout out to Josh from Dragon Ball University for lending his voice to do some awesome voice acting here for us and really bringing these characters and their struggles to life. And finally, we owe our patrons some love. To Samuel Vivero, Sage Serendipity, Lily, Dominique, Drax, Inebriated, Infernate Beast 326, Shannon Roberts, Jay Uray, Omar Cousin, Narku, Aaron Winters, Squad 100, Motolaman Drame, Normandy 1998, Knuckles OX, Pizza 15X, Don, Crimson Manifesto, Zach Haji, and DJ the Lazy Gamer. Thank you all so much. Your direct support of the channel does so much to make it possible to make better content with awesome visuals that also allow me to compensate the artists appropriately. So to you guys and all our channel members, so much love and appreciation. But on that note, friends, there is nothing left to say but to take care of yourselves and the world around you. And as always, sure to go beyond plus ultra. And I'll see you guys next time.